Alright, how's it going? All you first-time bikini competitors, I want to quickly go over today 5 tips that I have for you guys if you're planning on competing in your first show. I've been getting a lot of emails lately for people wanting to do competitions as the 2016 season has come to an end. So I thought that this video might be helpful for some of you who are kind of playing with the idea of whether they want to compete or not. Now, as you guys know, I competed in the Kelowna Classic this past May and I got first in my class. That in no way makes me an expert in this area. I just want to provide you with some tips that I kind of learned from my first competition, and I think it'll add some value to some of you. So tip number 1 is to really consider if you are ready to compete. So there's a couple of things that you want to look at. So the first one is, how is your current fitness status? So for this, I mean, how long have you been resistance training? Have you incorporated a good strength training regimen into your life that's maybe longer than 6 months? How's your caloric intake amount? Are you eating a healthy amount of calories that there's actually room to cut from? So when you actually go to do a competition, you have a significant amount of calories where you have room to cut from and actually make progress. If your calories are at a significantly low amount, if you're only doing cardio maybe 6 days a week, do you really think you're ready to compete in a bikini competition? You need to have some muscle mass. Not a whole lot for bikini, but if you're not any resistance training, it's just not going to be optimal for you to compete at this point in the game. If you're at a caloric intake amount that is extremely low, then you need to work on actually repairing your metabolic capacity so that you have a significant amount of calories to play with and some wiggle room when you actually go to cut for a competition. Next thing you want to consider is, how's your mental health? Even if you're mentally fit, even if you're a flexible dieter, dieting still takes a significant toll on you mentally. It is a battle every single day. Your hormones are all out of whack. You're thinking about food all the time. You're developing prep brain where all you think about is prep and food, and it is emotionally and mentally fatiguing. Also want to consider, how is your relationship with food and your body? I think a lot of people, women especially, will jump into a competition thinking that it's gonna fix their body issues that they have with themselves, and I really don't think it does. I had a lot of body issues before I competed, and that's particularly one of the reasons why I waited so long to compete. It wasn't until I was able to fix those issues that I decided that it was finally a good time to compete. So don't think that a competition is going to fix these issues. This goes for food as well. If you are already restricting yourself quite a bit and you have maybe a history of binging or any type of eating disorders, you definitely are not in the right place to compete. You need to have the ability to not binge, because your calories are going to get significantly low, and the lower your calories get, the more likely you are to binge, especially with the added stress on top of competing. So make sure that you really analyze your relationship with food and your relationship with your body. And then last thing you want to consider whether you are ready to actually compete or not are your finances. It is extremely expensive to compete. I try to do it as cheap as possible, and with everything I probably spent like maybe $2 to $3 grand. It is extremely expensive, and not a lot of people can handle that. So if you're not in a place financially where you can handle that, then yes, that's another thing you want to consider, whether you're ready to compete or not. So to name a couple of the expenses, you have your contest entry fee, your monthly coaching fee, your bikini suit, accessories, so this can include bikini bite for you to glue your bikini onto you, a pee cup or a funnel, jewelry and heels, your spray tan, makeup and hair if you decide to get someone else to do that, which I recommend, manis and pedis. I did my nails myself, and travel fees as well. Most people have to travel to compete, so travel and hotel fees are something you want to consider as well. I also got a photo shoot done, so that was another added expense. So a lot of things that go into it, and it adds up very quickly. Alright, so tip number 2 is to do your research. The number one thing I would do for this part is to go to a show. So many people will see some of the girls on Instagram and think how glamorous it is, and oh, I want to do that, and they jump into a show without really experiencing the entire thing and looking back and seeing the big picture. So definitely go to a show. That's where I originally got inspired to do it. I'm like, man, I want to do that. I want to get up on stage and do that. That looks like fun. Whereas some other people, they get really turned off by it and they're like, oh, that does not look like fun at all. Go to a show first before you decide to compete. A lot of other things that people don't realize is you're not allowed to wear deodorant, because the spray tan will turn you green. If you have deodorant on, you have to pee through a cup so you don't ruin the tan. You aren't allowed to shower for a few days depending on the tanning company, so everybody backstage stinks. And you don't really get much privacy, especially when you're doing your spray tan. I remember when I was doing my spray tan, they were supposed to let the girls go first, and even then that was very uncomfortable. And they were running a little bit behind, and you could see through like just the top right here. You can't see down below. The tents are completely covered, but you have a little like looking glass area, and I saw Kyle walk by. I'm like, oh shit, they're letting guys in here. So just no privacy whatsoever. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Another thing is after prejudging, you have to go back for the night show, and for me, I was extremely exhausted after prejudging. I didn't even want to go back. I just wanted to shower and go eat. And if you're in bikini, you were gonna be the last one on stage. So I got back for the night show at like 6 o'clock, and I didn't get off stage until 11:45. So it is a long, exhausting day of having to stay pretty and look glamorous and make sure your tan doesn't get ruined, and try to have some energy when you are already low calories and you just want to eat. You're ready for it to be over. And another thing people don't realize is this sport is completely subjective. So you may look awesome, you may think that you deserve to win, but the judges may not agree. It depends on historical wins, it depends on who else is there, and it depends on what they're looking for. So it is a completely subjective sport, so you have to be able to handle that. You put your heart and soul into this prep, and you look amazing, and you're proud of everything that you did, and the judges say, sorry, you're not good enough. So that's another thing that you really need to make sure that you're able to handle. Tip number 3, this is probably the biggest tip of all. If you are going to hire a coach, find a coach that works for you. I think a lot of people hire their coaches way too lightly. People need to be interviewing their coaches a lot more to ensure that you guys are on the same page. When I hired Sohi, I spent a lot of time determining if she was going to be the right fit for me. I was following her for a couple of years previous to considering her for my coach. I agreed with a lot of her methods. I followed her prep to see how she did it, and I was really inspired when she ate a Snickers every day and got first in her class, and I knew right there, I'm like, okay, she's gonna be the right fit for me. So once I decided on a coach, I actually worked with her in the off season. So that's another thing that you want to make sure that you're doing, especially if you are new to flexible dieting. Say you were doing a bro diet before and you're ready to do a flexible dieting approach. Don't like just jump into a prep trying to do flexible dieting. You still have to learn it. There's still a learning curve when it comes to it. So I highly recommend working with your coach in the off season to ensure that they know your body and that you understand their coaching style and that you guys are on the same page, because communication between the two of you is going to be huge to a successful prep. Choosing the wrong coach is horrible. Kyle went through this when he first decided to compete in the 2015 Western Canadians in Kelowna. He actually had to fire his coach during peak week because he didn't agree with anything that was being prescribed to him. It was not a good experience. I'm not even going to get into it. If you guys want to know a little bit more about this, I'm going to link Kyle's video right there about his experience with hiring the wrong coach. So I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you are really picky when you decide to choose your coach. Tip number 4 is peak week. Everybody is so obsessed with peak week and they think it's some magical week that's going to allow you to finally look stage ready. This is not the case. I thought this as well. I'm like, okay, when Sohi gave me my peak week protocol, I'm like, really? This is it? But I was already ready, like 3 weeks out. So peak week is not meant to be like a crazy week where you do drastic things in order to be ready to step on stage. You're not going to completely 180 how you look during your peak week. If you are ready before your peak week should actually be the easiest week out of the entire prep. And you should honestly be able to just coast into the show without doing anything extreme. Have you ever heard people say, oh, I looked so much better the day after my show? Well, this is typically due to unnecessary tactics that were used during peak week. So during peak week, I honestly just recommend ensuring that you keep everything as consistent as possible. Don't have any new foods, don't do any new activities. Just try to relax and keep your stress levels down, and just don't do anything to put yourself at risk for injuring yourself. So if you've never done any CrossFit or Olympic lifting, don't do that during your peak week. Maybe try that later. So make sure you ask your prospect coaches this question: what is your peak week protocol? If any of them say that you will be doing a water load, we'll cut your water at a certain time on Friday night, and we are going to cut your sodium the entire week of peak week, run, and continue searching for a coach that has done their research. Alright, tip number 5, post-show. Something that not many people consider. After your show, I think a lot of people don't realize how much your hormones are completely out of whack. It is actually much more difficult to diet out of a show after your show because you no longer have any goals. The show's over, there's nothing else to work towards, and a lot of people actually get a little bit depressed after a show because all that hard work is gone and your stage leanness doesn't actually stick around very long. It's typically gone within the next day or two. So it can be a little bit depressing after like 18 to 20 weeks of hard work of cutting and dieting. So maybe a week or two before the show is over, I recommend like sitting down and coming up with new goals right away. Whatever that may be, maybe it's to have a successful reverse diet, or maybe it's to stay a little bit lean for maybe a wedding or a trip or something like that. For me, I always knew that after my bikini show that I was going to do powerlifting. Yes, it wasn't for a few months later, but having that goal in mind, it allowed me to stay on track and implement a successful reverse diet, which was another goal. I wanted to document a successful reverse diet because a lot of bikini girls, they will put on 20 to 30 pounds post show, and that could typically be just from having a really restricted diet throughout the entire prep and not having any goals afterwards. So really try to ensure that you know what your goals are afterwards and understand the process and how your body is gonna react once your show is over and you start incorporating foods back into your diet. So the night of, once the show is actually over, go out and enjoy yourself, but do not binge. Do not try to eat everything as quick as possible and as much as possible. I promise you, you will regret it. Everybody gets sick, and it's not worth it. So again, have a specific goal in mind. Be like, okay, I'm gonna order one thing on the menu that I want. Maybe I'll have 4 slices of pizza, maybe 1 beer or 1 alcoholic beverage, and 1 dessert. Make sure you have like concrete numbers in place and stick to that amount. Try to listen to your body. When you feel physically full versus mentally full, stop eating. You still might feel sick, but at least you're not going to feel as sick, and you're going to practice intuitive eating to have some control. So it's going to help you with your reverse diet after the show. And then once it's over, after a day or two, try to ease out of such restrictive tracking. So if you were weighing out every single gram to a T, try to not worry about 5 grams here or there. Ease out of it and implement a reverse diet. This is where you incorporate calories back into your diet slowly. And just understand that the reverse diet part is actually much more difficult than the actual dieting, because like I mentioned, you no longer have a goal in mind and your hormones are all out of whack. Your satiety is completely low, where nothing feels like it makes you full. Even though you feel physically full and bloated, your mind is telling you, you gotta eat more, you gotta eat more, you gotta eat more. So I still recommend tracking, just not so rigidly, and don't let your emotions take over, because you're gonna want to eat everything in sight. Even if you are a flexible dieter, the reverse diet for me was hard. It was really hard, but it wasn't impossible. I just didn't let my emotions take over. So those are my 5 tips, you guys. I hope you found them helpful. If you did, make sure you share this video to someone else who's considering competing in bikini for the first time, and I think it'll be really helpful for them. If you guys have any more questions, I would be happy to answer them. Just comment down below and I will make sure I get back to you, or you can send me an email at Krysten@thenattyhour.com. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I will see you in the next one.